Well, hey everybody, it's Riley, just catching up from this week's discussion prompt and long weekend, Hampton homecoming, had Emory Anderson, who I know a lot of you know, preached for me today, so he gave me a little bit of a break, but it was still a long day nonetheless, and today I'm going to jump into just exploring the similarities between Zechariah and the Revelation. So obviously Zechariah authored his book, and the Apostle John gave us the New Testament work, the Revelation of Jesus Christ. And my position is that Zechariah serves as a prophetic and also a symbolic prototype for the Revelation. I have an amillennial approach. That's kind of like the hermeneutic that I apply when I examine the Revelation. And I think here we see that the apocalyptic imagery, the themes from divine judgment, restoration, even specific visionary motives reveal that John's revelation is actually building upon the prophetic framework of Zechariah. And not only does that, but it expands even the cosmic and Christ-centered scale of those documents. So just kind of going back, both Zechariah and Revelation are in that apocalyptic literature. It's a style that's used with vivid imagery, angelic intermediaries, and the symbolic visions that reveal God's ultimate purpose for history. We see Zechariah writing in the context of Babylon. The people are in exile, and he's using these apocalyptic visions to encourage Israel to go back and rebuild, but also to look forward to the coming kingdom. And Revelation captures similar language. Obviously, it's written centuries later to a persecuted church dispersed throughout the Roman Empire. And the images show that God is still in control and his kingdom is still going to prevail. A couple of things that are shared. So Zechariah, he has his night visions. So this is chapters 1-6. And John's visions in the Revelation have a similar structural resemblance. Both are delivered, again, through these angelic interpreters. There's these cycles of judgment and restoration. Here, one in particular, Zechariah chapter 1, verse 8, says, "I saw a man riding on a red horse, standing among the myrtle trees, and behind him were red, sorrel, and white horses." This parallels what we read in the Revelation in chapter 6, 1-8, where John sees the four horsemen of the apocalypse, all symbolizing divine judgment. Bachman notes that John's four horsemen seem intentionally reminiscent of Zechariah's heavenly patrols. So both here are representing God's sovereign activity in the world. Another image is the plumb line. So that's the measuring line or the measuring rod. Zechariah 2, 1-2 describes a man measuring Jerusalem. And then in Revelation chapter 11, we see John is measuring the temple of God. So both cases serve as symbols to show God's protection and his ownership of his people. Then a couple of themes that kind of run throughout both texts. Both books reveal God's ultimate victory over evil, his restoration plan for his people, and this big picture of a messianic ruler. Zechariah 9:9 says, "Rejoice greatly, O daughter Zion. Behold, your king is coming to you. Righteous and having salvation is he, humble and mounted on a donkey." And so we see this clearly is pointing towards Jesus, towards the Christ triumphant entry in the Gospels. But the Revelation actually captures the same picture of the same king returning in his glory. Revelation 19:11, "Then I saw," this is John, "I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse. The one sitting on it is called Faithful and True." And the reason why I wanted to highlight these two, because you get the dual picture of the Messiah being humble, being a suffering servant, yet he's also victorious, ruling and reigning. Zechariah points to a coming shepherd king, and this is Zechariah 13, 7 through 9. Revelation reveals him as a lamb, the lamb who was slain yet reigns forever, in chapter 5, verse 6 through 10. Even some of the cosmic imagery of the text overlaps. So there's the lampstands that's captured in both Zechariah chapter 4 and then Revelation 1, where the seven churches, their lampstands, some will have their lampstands removed. The mountains, another picture here symbolizing God's presence. That's a theme all throughout Scripture, specifically in Zechariah 14, Revelation 8. There's living water flowing from Jerusalem. So that's also in Zechariah 14, verse 8, and then Revelation 22, verse 1. So you kind of see all these images. They run parallel to emphasize that the revelation really isn't a brand new vision. It's the Christ-centered continuation of this Old Testament prophecy. And so it's highlighting that the Messiah, the one who would fulfill this prophecy, is identified as Jesus. In fact, Zechariah ends with this this apocalyptic vision of the day of the Lord. So this big global conflict where God's going to show up and intervene and establish his reign over all the nations. Revelation has a similar culmination with the exact same pattern. The defeat of evil, the renewal of all creation, new heaven, new earth, and the eternal reign of the Lord. Both of these texts point to hope that God's kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven. If you wanted to counter this, some scholars take the position that the similarities are simply due to shared apocalyptic conventions, basically saying there's a common Jewish literature and this is just a style of writing and there's no direct influence. And I would say that's probably fair. Again, both books do draw from the same symbolic tradition. However, I think the specific correspondences, again, the horses, the lampstands, the measuring rods, the Messiah, the one who conquers evil, it sounds like there's a deliberate theological continuity, not just coincidence. So John, I believe, is consciously using Zechariah's language to show that Jesus fulfills the prophetic hope of Israel. And so just to land the plane, Zechariah, the text, and Revelation share not only the same apocalyptic form, meaning genre or style of writing, but these two documents share the same prophetic purpose. You get the pattern given from Zechariah, and then in Revelation, we see God gives the fulfillment. Both of these documents call God's people to faithfulness in the midst of a storm, in the midst of trial, in the midst of persecution, displacement, and it gives them the assurance that the King is coming, the nations will bow, and Jesus, the Lord, will reign over the earth. Zechariah whispers, the Lord remembers. Revelation shouts, behold, here's the King. Again, just to give my sources, trying to figure out, so coach me on this team, more the academic side versus, what we were presenting in some of our earlier discussions. But I use the Bible, so ESV translation, obviously Old Testament intro, Dillard and Longman's text, the climax of prophecy from Bachman, and the Revelation by Beale. Thank y'all for listening. Looking forward to hearing your posts.